for ESPN Front Office Insider, Bobby Marks. Bobby, perfect day to join us, not just because of your column, but because of the news that we got from your colleague, Adrian Wojnarowski, just a few minutes ago about some of the coaching hires. But I want to bring you into that question that Kenny just asked. When you're trying to install a defense and trying to get into the upper half of the league in defensive efficiency for the first time in 16 years, how much of that is personnel and how much of that is a coaching scheme?
Well, I think the majority of it is probably what you have on the court. I mean, I think you can preach as much as you want and have as much of a foundation in place as far as how you want guys to at least play from a defensive standpoint. But if you don't have the horses, you could compete and there'll be an effort standpoint, but that only gets you so far. So I don't think they do have the personnel right now to compete in the upper echelon of some of these teams, and that certainly could change. I mean, as I said, the biggest thing is finding that right person, and then the next thing is finding the right players and to surround that coach who you hire.
Bobby, when you took a look at this Kings roster, I know this is a kind of a crazy thing to say, considering how they didn't make the playoffs again for the 16th straight year and weren't even that close. But I look at this team and I don't think they're that far off. I think there's some tweaks. I think obviously they need a little more just overall talent, but they do have pieces on this team. I feel you've seen a number of different successful rosters. How do you feel about this Kings roster as is and some of the work they need to do in the offseason?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, it's not as far off as people probably think. I mean, they've identified their two foundation players as Sabonis and Fox. You could probably put David Mitchell up there as far as another young player to build around. I think now it's a matter of what do you add to it based on either in the draft you'll have a high lottery pick. I said I mentioned in the article you have 2 seconds and don't dismiss second-round picks. I mean, I think you're seeing in this playoffs the value of players that were selected, whether it be Herb Jones down in New Orleans, who's probably going to make one of these all-defensive teams, and he was picked 35th. So I think you can find something there in the second round. But the big question will be certainly what you do with Harrison. Harrison's going to go into last year of his last year's contract. He's probably been one of the more consistent players, in the past 3 years plus there. What do you do with him? You've got, $40 million plus an expiring contract to maybe use in a deal. You've got all your draft picks. So it's not like the cupboards are bare and you're walking into an empty situation. You've seen it in the playoffs. Like if you hire the right coach and you just kind of, it doesn't have to be a finished product what you have around him. It could be a work in progress, but you hire the right coach, and whether it be in New Orleans with Willie Green and Chris Finch in Minnesota, and some of these, Taylor Jenkins in Memphis. That's as big as off-season transaction that you will have, and that's why I've kind of put the that premium in that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the exact line was the hiring of the next coach is the most important transaction in Kings history and will define McNair's tenure. So with pressure like that, Bobby, who is it? Come on, who should it be? We just found out Mike D'Antoni's getting an interview. Mark Jackson's getting an interview. We see Mike Brown, Steve Clifford, Darvin Ham, Charles Lee, Will Hardy, all mentioned as guys who the Sacramento Kings plan to talk to in the coming days.
You know what? I think there's so many different ways you can go. I mean, certainly, we've seen young assistant coaches work, right? Like I know we always hear the same names, whether it be D'Antoni, and I know Mark's been out of the league for a long time here. It works. Like you can go out and hire Charles Lee, who was in Milwaukee, or Will Hardy, guys like that. Is the one thing you just can't do is want a mulligan a year from now or 2 years from now, and it doesn't work here. So I think this is going to take a while. I mean, I think we've got the pre-draft camp in mid-May. I don't know if we'll have a coach in hand by then, but they'll go through the list. You started to see it a little bit come out today. Whether it be a veteran or a young coach, but I don't think if it was me, I would be trending probably towards one of these younger assistants here because there is a track record. We've seen it in the past as far as, this, as you guys said, this roster is not a finished product, and they can kind of develop their own identity with them.
Yeah. One of the more intriguing situations for this Kings this offseason for me is the situation with DiVincenzo. And can you kind of elaborate on what the Kings' options are there? Is it just as simple as whatever he's offered, if they like it, they can match? Do you have any idea of what you could expect to see Dante being offered from some of these teams? I'm thinking around $10 to $12 million a year, and I'd be willing to do that if I were the Kings. Well, how do you kind of see that situation going with?
Yeah, I think first they'll tender him a qualifying offer, so he'll become a restricted free agent. It's not a big marketplace for teams that have cap space. So when you're looking at the mid level, which is around 10-3, is for the teams that are that are over the cap here, and that's the majority of teams. Then you've got teams like Detroit and Indiana. I don't think Portland will join that group. Orlando, Detroit, San Antonio here. It's hard for me to think a team going out and offering Dante 4 years, $48 million in that thing. I think he's still coming back from that injury that knocked him out of last year's playoffs and a good chunk of this year. It's almost like a guy who has an ACL. And, you don't really see the full body, the good of him until maybe a year from that injury. So it has been a little bit up and down here. But you lose him, it's not like you can go out and replace him, right? You don't have cap space. If you feel like he's part of your future and he can be here, you take an aggressive approach. So I think that number you mentioned is right. I mean, I think you're probably in that $10-11 million range. It's hard for me to think that he goes out and gets a big time offer.
And Bobby, you mentioned something in your in this breakdown here that I always think about with other players, but for some reason didn't think about with Domantas Sabonis, and we have talked regularly about. You mentioned the importance of the hiring of the head coach. This whole season is incredibly important for the next 3, 4, 5 years of the Sacramento Kings, because you've got the ability to extend Domantas Sabonis coming up. Obviously, you want to make De'Aaron happy. You want that all to work out. But as I was reading your breakdown, it doesn't make financial sense for Domantas Sabonis to sign the actual extension, right? Like he's going to become a free agent.
Well, that's right. I mean, that's when Indiana signed him to that rookie extension, they got him on a great deal. Well, the downside is that from an extension standpoint, you can only go off 120% off his number. So the value contract helps the team, and it wasn't Sacramento who signed him. It helps the team, but then it hurts you. Because when you outplay that contract, you're basically going to have to wait until he becomes an unrestricted free agent. It's similar what Chicago went through. What just went through with Zach LaVine, where Zach's on a $19 million contract. Well, Zach can go out and make $200 million plus as a free agent with Chicago compared to signing an extension for $100 million here. So he's extension eligible. I don't see anything being worked out if I was him. I mean, this is probably one of his last big bites of the apple, and I think if he doesn't sign, it's not an indication that he doesn't want to be in Sacramento. I think he's a West Coast guy. He's already come as, I think his wife's from California. He's already he's been traded there. He's made it known that he wants to be there, but it's more of kind of a business decision because he can make more money, a couple years down the road when he's an unrestricted free agent.
Yeah. Bobby, real quick, when do you think a coach needs to be in place for a team to kind of progress with the offseason? So how much are they needed for the draft? Obviously, we definitely want it before free agency, but I'm thinking more so the draft. Like, do they need to be at some of those combines, the thing in Chicago and everything, or can the GM and the front office guys handle that until they get a coach in place?
Yeah, I mean, in a perfect world, you'd love to have the coach for the combine, which is the week of the 16th of May. You'd love to have him in the meetings. You'd love to have hhim there observing. You're going to get these players that you saw in Chicago in your facility, the month of June leading up to the draft on the 23rd. So you'll get another opportunity here. But from a meeting standpoint, yeah, I mean, you'd love to have him, but I don't think you're forced to do anything by then. But certainly by June 1st, you'd want somebody in place. I mean, that's the you want the coach involved in the draft process because he's got to coach him. He's got to whatever philosophy he has, offense and defensively, like they're going to need to be, how that player fits here. So I think that's your window there from the combine until June 1st, where you probably do see a hire.
Yeah.
Great stuff as always, Bobby. We really appreciate your time today. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you, Bobby.
You're welcome. Thanks, guys.